let's get into it here today. By the way, we'll play some audio through the show. Sirianni with us yesterday on our program. So, obviously, he has been, I would say even more than the team, like the team. Sirianni's been the main topic in the last, whatever the heck it's been, 60 hours or so since that Eagles-Saints game because of his decisions. And I want to get in today. This is really a everybody get on the record kind of day. This is one of those days. We're 3 games in to Nick Sirianni's 4th season. I don't know anybody that doesn't at least have a strong opinion. I know most, I sense most are anti-Sirianni. There are certainly some that are pro-Sirianni. I think there's a certain degree of confusion, but everyone's got some form of conviction on this. I want to hear from you today at 215-592-9494 to get on the record with what we've got with Nick Sirianni as the head coach and basically answer this question. Nick Sirianni is what? As the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni is what? Good coach? Bad coach? Not here for long? Someone with a great resume? What is he? Talk to us, 215-592-9494. John, first crack at it, John. Sirianni is what, John Ritchie?
I struggle to believe in Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni is something less than what I had hoped to this point. Struggle to believe in him. I want our offensive coaches to be able to have an offensive conversation that Nick participates in and contributes in and dazzles other coaches in. Does it feel like that's who or what we got with our head guy? A guy who's going to dazzle those other coaches. I'm good with the fact that the organization wants to keep a certain amount of sleight of hand available for these things. Like they certainly keep their options open.
Yes, they do.
It feels like the Eagles reserve the right to control this narrative, and I feel like Nick's probably aware that a major component of his job is just falling on his sword, and he's good at that. And his players and his coaches seem to love him for how selflessly he has fallen on his sword in the past. Nick gave up play calling. The question is, did he really want to give up the play calling?
Yeah, we don't know.
He deserved to have to give up the play calling. How does that feel to you? Like, I feel like this is not of Nick's wishes. To me, it doesn't feel like Nick's a confident up-and-comer who cuts this dashing, demanding, commanding figure in front of his team who respects him and loves the hell out of him. To me, it's more like he bumbles a little bit. He knows a lot about football, but he can't always communicate it as well as I wish he could. That's my worry.
Let me just say this, John. I agree with a lot of what you said there. I actually think they like him a lot. I really do.
The team, I think they like him a lot. I think that the organization likes him a lot because he falls on his sword.
But I mean the players.
Because
I think they do.
Because he's nice, he's easy. They're practicing for 45 minutes in many cases. They're not hitting in many cases. So, yeah, I do think the team likes him, but I want Kellen Moore to be the main offensive mind who translates the plays, like the ideas, into plays, who translates the plans into plays, and then calls those plays in games. I don't want Nick Sirianni being a major part of that. Yesterday he told us that they, discuss and that he's going to chime in and he's going to make those calls. I would prefer that Kellen Moore keeps it consistent. I would prefer that is what the quarterback gets a feel for, that Kellen Moore's rhythm. Kellen Moore, and I know they're saying everything's collaborative. Again, I know they're keeping their options open.
What he said, but just to be clear, for those that missed it, what Sirianni said this week, and it was after the game on Sunday, is that there are times he's just going to overrule Kellen Moore. Now, I know some people don't believe that. I do believe that, but he stated publicly that there are going to be times where he's just going to make the call in a game. And we wondered as recently as last week, is he even allowed to do that? He's saying he is allowed to do that, and he is doing it.
Yes, and he's doing it. And by the way, the relationship between Nick Sirianni and our quarterback is a whole other thing. Remember last year, we don't know what the heck happened with that, and we'll probably never know. That is an issue. That can be problematic. We lose a game, not problematic. We lose 2 games, maybe sometimes in some quarters of Philadelphia, people will start to mutter. But, man, we lose for a month because Jalen or Saquon gets a high ankle sprain. watch out. This questions will arise. Will the quarterback start to question the authority of the head coach? I don't know. I worry about stuff like that. I worry that Nick we've seen him lose control at times on the sideline with fan bases.
Yeah.
We've seen Big Dom have to pull him aside. We've heard stories about how that can get crazy. Nick's decision-making in this last game, if you can trust, what we gather, the intel that we gather, when he's making calls that feel like he's trying to take too big a bite, remember Carson Wentz trying to take too big a bite on third down.
I remember.
Stop pushing the ball downfield. Just take what's there. Jalen Hurts, stop breaking the pocket, trying to get. Just take the check down in the flat. It's there for you. Nick Sirianni, these calls, when you're chiming in, are you trying to, compensate, overcompensate?
John, let me ask you a question.
That's my worry.
Let me ask you a question. Do you believe in him as the Eagles head coach? Because ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, that's really what we're asking today. And I'm asking you at 215-592-9494. I'm asking you basically to go on the record and say whether you believe in the head coach. John, do you believe in him?
No, not as a head coach, not as our head coach. I believe if there are 32 head coaches in the world that are the best at this job, I would like to think that there's someone who can do it better than Nick Sirianni
all right,
can.
So it's a fascinating thing because I know, John, I hear the pain in your answer there because you want to believe in the head coach of the Eagles.
I do.
We have seen him have success. He's the kind of guy that's, while irritating in some ways with the theatrics sometimes, he's a good dude. Like, there's no doubt he's a good guy, so you want to root for him. And I think he's got a rootable component from that standpoint. But also, it's like, man, the theatrics sometimes get really irritating. Let me just tell you where I'm at with the head coach. And again, everyone can weigh in 215-592-9494. I mean, obviously, it's a truism and a basic fact to say he's a coach whose job is on the line. We know that. That's clear. I do think he's a better coach than most people think. I really do. I think there's a lot of people out there. This is just my perception talking to friends, but primarily just here on WIP talking to, thousands of callers in the midst of a season. I think a lot of people just think he's a joke, and I don't think he's a joke. I mean, Elliott has said, and I think it's good that Elliott's been pounding this pavement on this one, like the Eagles got a win the other day that they were an underdog on the road in a tough spot. Now, we don't really know how good New Orleans is. Time will tell whether they were a phony baloney 2-0 or like they're legitimately headed to 11, 12 wins. We'll see. But it was a good win to get, and it was a win in the midst of a lot of adversity that a lot of people did not think they would get. So I do think he gets unfairly maligned where he doesn't get credit when he deserves credit. I really do believe that. So I think he's better than most people think. I know he's got a really good-looking resume, but I also know that's propped up by what I would refer to as two massive advantages in the first 3 years of his existence as the head coach. First off, in the first 2 years, he had an all-time easy schedule. Just all-timer. I mean, he takes over a team. When they got on a run in 2021 and ended up finishing 9-8, that second half of the season, it was a joke. It was a complete joke with that schedule. And then in 2022, it was basically the same schedule again, but this is where advantage number 2 came in. An unbelievable roster. Like an unbelievable roster. Unbelievable. So I look at his resume, which says in basic clear terms, 3 years, 3 playoffs, and a Super Bowl berth. And I say, the resume is great, but I do feel there were advantages built in that you kind of have to grade him on a curve as a result of that. Look, I feel like we know he's not as good with play design as we'd like. And that's a problem. I also think he's not as much CEO coach as I thought as recently as a week ago. And that also might be a problem. Am I in or out on Sirianni? I will tell you this. It's not the easiest question for me to answer, but I lean out. Now, the good news is you're going to find out one way or the other by the end of the year. The bad news is you might waste a season where you got this incredible offensive talent. You don't want to see a season wasted. But if I were to tell you right now, in or out on Sirianni, for me, I'd be out. But I'm qualifying it by saying this. I'm not 2 feet out. I'm 1 foot out. There are people that are so far out It's like when Daniel LaRusso got driven off the mat by Johnny Lawrence before he came back and saved the day with the crane kick that was illegal, by the way. But like, driven off the mat. I'm not off the map or mats on Sirianni. I think there are a lot of people, frankly, that treat him very unfair, that think he's a joke. And I mean, I find it really hard to believe you can have a record this good through 3 seasons and 3 games and be a joke. But a lot of people think he is. But if I'm really bringing it right home, I'm telling you, I'm certainly more out than in. But time will tell ultimately what the Eagles will be at the end of this year. 215-592-9494. It's a get-on-the-record day. Where do you stand on the Eagles head coach? We've seen him for a while now be the head coach. What do you make of it? Joe DeCamera, John Ritchie. Your phone calls. Plus, we'll get into the Phillies next as well on 94 WIP.